Are you hoping you win your fantasy football season-long league? Then you're going to need to do well in your draft. We're going to give you 5 really critical tips that most people are not utilizing in order to dominate your fantasy football draft. Hello everyone, I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Gary Kurtzman. And Eric, I've been really excited for this show. You know, I think that it's so important to dominate your fantasy football draft because, hey, let's face it, mid-season, pickups and drops and managing your roster is very important, but it all starts with the fantasy draft.
Yeah, and it's you just hate that feeling if you come out of your draft going, oh, I just didn't do well. Now I'm going to be having to dig myself out of a hole all season. No, you don't want that, and you won't have that if you follow these 5 rules.
That's right. So let's dive into it right now. Here's rule number 1, and Eric, it's surprising. It's really surprising how many even experienced players don't follow this rule. Update your rankings with the latest player availability.
Yeah, so obviously if you're using a magazine, you've got to make sure that all of the news, all the depth chart information, all of the coaching tendencies that we saw in the preseason, your list reflects that. And
that's very true. And even if you don't use a magazine, even if you use a website and get the latest intel, here's what a lot of people do. A lot of people finalize their draft list about a week before the draft. Okay, and here's the problem with that. Now, granted, you are finalizing your draft list after the OTAs are done and after the preseason games are done. But Eric, there's so much fantastic intel out there that takes place after the last preseason game is played. Coaches get interviewed. They talk about tips. They talk about tendencies that they're going to have, changes in strategy for the upcoming year. You also find out about final depth chart changes, injuries, and so forth. So it's so important to update that draft list up to even the night before the draft to make sure you get all that intel.
And that draft list must correlate specifically to your league's settings, because the best draft list in the world, if it doesn't match your settings, is worthless.
Absolutely.
So the second list is you come into the draft with a nice updated list that matches your league settings. But people make the mistake of coming into the draft and they're not flexible. You have to have a strategy, but that strategy can absolutely change, Gary. I love the old no running back strategy, no RB, or people who say, no matter what, I'm picking 2 running backs in the first round. You can't have that strategy because you got to see how your particular draft progresses. If Antonio Brown is available at the 7th spot, I don't care if 6 running backs went first. You better pick Antonio Brown.
No, that's right. I mean, really, honest to God, anybody who isn't flexible and just goes in with a strategy of I'm going to pick a running back, or I'm going to pick a wide receiver no matter what.
Some crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
Absolutely. You got to go with the best player available. The best player available, really, depending on the strategy the people that draft before you is going to change. You got to be flexible when you're in the draft.
That's right. So go ahead on our third
tip. So along the lines of being flexible, you need to employ a strategy, and this is going to be a new term for some of the viewers out there, even the more experienced ones. Employ value above replacement. What is value above replacement, you ask? I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about this video is we're not rehashing just all the things you hear on the internet, because you don't hear a lot about this, value over replacement.
That's
Explain.
right. It's a relatively new concept. I think some of the more experienced players have been using it for 2 or 3 years, but for most of the people out there, value above replacement is just not utilized. So here's the deal. What a lot of players do is they'll, of course, rank their players. So you've got your list of running backs and quarterbacks and wide receivers. You got them at 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 20, whatever, right? Now, some of the more experienced players will group them into tiers. So your tier 1 players are your can't misses. Your tier 2 players are, of course, the players that have a drop down. After that, maybe tier 3 are the mid to late round players. Tier 4 are the sleepers, that sort of thing. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do is move from that and evolve to value above replacement. So every player on your draft list needs to have a number next to their name. The number next to their name is going to be the difference between the total projected fantasy points for the season minus the total projected fantasy points for the season for the player who you think is going to be best available at his position that's still available after the draft. In other words, if your player goes down with an injury or just plain sucks, then this is the guy that you're going to replace him with.
And I guess that's one of the reasons why a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who actually might score more fantasy points than anyone else, actually from a value over replacement isn't that valuable, because you can still pick up someone like potentially Matt Ryan might not even be selected in draft.
In a 10 quarterback league, that's absolutely true. And the bottom line is this: there will always be a pretty solid, backup QB that will be available on the waiver wire. There's almost never a solid backup running back or backup wide receiver available on the waiver wire. Perhaps in the first few weeks, as we're still trying to get a hold of, a handle on what the sleepers are going to be. But that's a terrific example for value above replacement.
And that value over replacement becomes really key, because that'll help you decide when the right time, for example, to pick that quarterback. And we do that in our overall top list, where we give a listing of all of the draft picks.
That's right. It makes it very easy to decide, do I pick the running back now? Do I pick the wide receiver now? Do I pick a tight end right now? Hey, whichever player has the highest value above replacement, that's the one you choose.
All right, so you got your updated list. You've tied it to the specific scoring system. You know that you're going to go in and be flexible and consider value over replacement. You still might not have a good draft if you don't practice. And that is the key. We want to see that you are practiced and ready to go by doing mock drafts.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, practice makes perfect. It's true with every other aspect of our lives. Why wouldn't it be true with fantasy football? And I'll tell you who the best and most successful fantasy football players are out there. They're the people that do mock drafts a week before the draft, 3 days, even the day before the draft, to make sure that they're up to date on what the latest trends are. They get the ADP of where players are being taken. Eric, I just can't underscore your point enough.
Yeah, and that's average draft position. And so when you run your draft, you're not surprised exactly about how what players are actually doing and when they're going in your particular draft. So when you come in with that advantage of having that experience of the mock draft,
if you can take advantage of a situation in some way, it's your duty as an American to do it.
So do it. And we're going to do it along with you. In August, we're going to have several shows where we do a mock draft as a part of our show, and you can let us know, show us, you can see what we're thinking as we go through the draft. So when you draft, you'll be prepared.
And then when you draft, this gets into tip number 5. Spy on people. Spy on people, Eric.
Now, what is that, Gary? Spying?
Well, spying doesn't necessarily mean peeking over your shoulder and trying to check out their draft list. No. No, that's cheating. That's not spying. Spying is, let me explain it by way of example. Let's say that there is a 10-team draft. And I draft number 9, and Eric here drafts number 10. So I'm now presented with a choice in the first round, second round, third round, any round, really, okay, of do I take the quarterback that's highest on my list? Do I take the wide receiver? Now, of course, value above replacement is going to be key here, but for spying, if I know that Eric has already taken a quarterback and I'm tempted to take a quarterback for this coming round, I'm probably going to wait until it snakes back around again. Why would I do that? Because it's a 1 QB league, and I know by spying that he's already picked a quarterback, so he is unlikely to take that pick from me. So I'm going to go with maybe that wide receiver, that running back, just to make sure that he doesn't steal him from me, because I know darn well, because I've spied on him, he's not going to steal that quarterback.
And I'm so surprised how few people use this strategy. And if you pick 8th, you can do the same thing with the players who are picked 9 and 10th. Just track them. But you also can do it globally. Gary, when you're in a draft, you can look and see, hey, you know what? I haven't yet picked, let's say, a tight end. And I've got 8 tight ends have gone in this 10-team league. And I'm looking at my list, and I don't really care between the next 2 or 3 tight ends. Wait. there's no reason for you to pick a tight end now, because A, it's very unlikely that someone will pick up a backup tight end for a while, hopefully. We suggest you never do it.
Right, of course.
But there's all kind of...
But it'll wait till the far later rounds regardless, so your point's very valid.
Yeah, there's all kind of crazy people out there, so they might pick a second tight end. But there's no hurry for you to do that. Go ahead and pick up that third, fourth, fifth wide receiver or running back before you go for your starting tight end in that scenario.
No, I couldn't agree more.
I thought it was brilliant. What's your language, bud? We're on the air.
Exactly. So now, Eric, I think these have been 5 very valuable tips, even for the more experienced players, to make sure that you dominate your draft. But if there are tips out there that we haven't shared, or if you would like to share a comment on a tip that we did share that you think the home viewers would benefit from, please do comment on our video at the comment section below. I think all the viewers would appreciate it. Eric and I would appreciate it. Please go ahead and share your thoughts via comment.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, and we also appreciate if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, because we're going to be doing a bunch of shows in the preseason, and if you don't want to miss any, after you hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon to get notified when the new video comes out.
Absolutely. And until next time, I'm Gary.
And I'm Eric. We're the Fantasy Football Consultants, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.